Okay, I'm in my garage working on a project, and then because my video was uploading the, this one here on building the shed greenhouse, but then I realized, you know what, I need to actually shoot a disclaimer before the video, because I know people are probably going to, they're probably going to nail me down on a lot of things that I did on it that were probably wrong to them. But here's the deal. It's like I said in my last video, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a carpenter. So the way that I did it may not be up to your standards, may not be up to carpenter standards, and a lot of people are probably going to have a stroke on the way I did some of it. But it's okay, because here's the deal. Like for instance, the very first thing I know that people are going to say is I built it on 4x4 frame. Almost 30 years ago, I built another shed on 4x4 frame on the ground on plastic, and that thing right now is still, it's like the day I built it. So to me, I'm just following past experience, and history tells me that the 4x4s for me are going to be perfectly fine for the size of the shed that I'm building and for the greenhouse foundation. So that's going to be the first one I'm going to get criticized on. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get some insert some video where I think there may be some questions that people would have about my methods and why I did things the way I did. But it's too late now. It's built. Anyways, I'll go through the video and probably insert some more. But there was something else I was going to tell you, but just I don't know what it is. Now, when I went to edit these videos that I have, I counted them all up and realized I shot over 6 hours of footage. And so you guys don't want to see 6 hours of me building that shed greenhouse. People wanted to actually see the process, and so I'm just going to throw it up. It's kind of raw, but it's just, I think you'll get an idea of how I built this thing. And if you want to follow along, if you are going to follow along and do it exactly like me, and wind comes along and blows it down, don't blame me, because like I said, I'm not an engineer, but it's going to last a long time. It's going to outlast me, I guarantee it. So anyway, so here is the video of building the shed greenhouse. Okay, so I've laid out where the new greenhouse is going, and this is the northernmost part of the north garden. I wanted to go a little farther, but because I have my brush pile there, and that's where I always put the brush because it's up against the hill, and so every fall I torch that, and every spring I do also. So all my scrap branches and stuff go there for torching. Otherwise, I could have taken the my little dirt road here where I take the tractor. I could have just pushed it that way farther and then made the greenhouse bigger or farther in the garden, but I couldn't do it. So this is as far as I can go where my fencing here is. Okay, so this is the shed portion of the foundation. It's made with 6 4x4s. 4 8-footers. There's 2 in the front and 2 in the back that I've secured with those metal plates, and then 2 6-footers on each end. Okay, so for the greenhouse portion of the foundation, I'm going to cut 2 7-footers, and then I'm going to go 12 feet across. And I have a 10-foot 4x4, so I'm going to attach a 2-foot 4x4 to the 10-foot to make 12 feet. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the 8-foot 4x4s, and 1 of the 10-footers, and I'm just going to use a scrap from one of the 6-footers over there to do it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's 8 8-foot 4x4s and 1 10-foot 4x4. Now, I was going to get a 12-footer, but they didn't have them in stock, so it would have been nice to have a 12-foot 4x4. I couldn't get it, so I'm just going to have to piece them together. Okay, so my pieces are cut. I have a 7-footer there, a 7-footer there, and a 10-footer here, and a 2-foot piece there. Now, I'm centering the greenhouse on the shed, so I came in 2 feet on each side. So yeah, I was going to put it off to one side and then put a door right there, but then I decided, no, I'm going to have doors on the end of the shed, and then I have a door in the greenhouse, so I don't need a door there. So I just centered it on the shed. Okay, so it took a lot of leveling, but I finally got it completely level. North and south, east and west, and both sections, the greenhouse section and the shed section. So we should be good to go. I put black plastic down because I don't want to have any weeds. And in the greenhouse section here, I mean, of course it's logical for the shed section, but for the greenhouse, the soil here is not that great. It's really hard. And so in the greenhouse, I'm going to be growing in like small beds, large pots, and things like that. So this will be a good weed barrier. Okay, so there it is. The floor of the shed part is done. Now it's time to start working on the walls. Okay, so the overall height of this wall is 82.5 inches. Now that's just 1.5 inches shy of the 7 feet that I'm shooting for. And the reason being is because I'm going to have a top plate. Once I stand all the walls up, there'll be a top plate that goes around the top. So that's why this is 1.5 inches shorter than that. So on the sides here, on the very outside, I have two pieces that are 79.5 inches. Then I have a top piece, which is 76 3/4 or 78 3/4, and a bottom piece that's 78 3/4. And then I have a header up there made out of just 2x4s. I know probably 2x6 would have been better, but I want the head clearance. And so I've got two of those headers right there that are 75 3/4 inches long, and they're screwed together. And then I have two posts here that I'm going to marry together, and each one of those is 76 inches. So I've got four of them, two on each side, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I have some blocking in here that is 6.5 inches, and that will make up 11 inches here. So I've got 4.5, 6.5 for the blocking, 4.5 for these three, and that'll be 11 inches. So I got 11 inch here. Now I put a double blocking and a double 2x here because I wanted the strength, because I'm going to be hanging the doors on here. And I've got 6 of these blockings. Now overall, I used on each wall, I used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 2x4s for each end wall. And the wall on the other side is going to be exactly like this one. And I'm going to build custom doors for this right here. 4, 5, and the 6th one right there. So about every 16 inches I'm going to go up. This doesn't have to be perfect. I screwed this side into the header, and then I screwed my last block into this. And then this one, of course, is not screwed into anything except this here. But this tied into here, this will tie into this. And so I don't have to worry about tying this into there. Okay, so the side walls are going to be a challenge. Because the shed is so narrow, I can't build the wall on the floor and then stand it up. So I'm going to have to try to kind of build it in place. But It'll come out just fine. It's just going to be a small challenge here. I'm going to build it in I'm going to build each of them in pieces. So there'll be 2 pieces for the back wall and 2 pieces for the front wall. Okay, so laying out for my studs, I want to go 16 inch. However, I don't want to measure from the corner of my wall here. I want to go from the outside, because I want to go from the outside of this wall, because this is where I'm going to start my T111 siding. So I want to go from the outside of this to my 16 inches right here, like that. And that's how I want to do it all the way down. So I want to come in like this and mark 16 inches. So it's actually going to be 12.5 inches to my first stud, because I've got 3.5 here. Okay, so the width of each of these walls is 92.5. I'm going to have 2 walls here that I'm going to stand up separately. So 92.5 inches is half the distance between this wall and that wall. I'm going to have to hand hold this and kind of free float it. Don't get any tighter than that. Ooh, nice. Okay, the back wall is complete. Everything is level, squared up. Now I'm going to start on this wall here, the greenhouse side. And this is going to be a challenge, because this now is an 8-foot wall, and I'm going to have to build it across these 4x4s. And so most of it's just going to be floating in the air as I screw it together, but that's okay. We'll make it work. So now I'm going to, let's build this wall here 8 feet, and actually like an inch shy of 8 feet total.
it's difficult because this shed isn't that wide. So I kind of have to free float this wall when I'm screwing it together, which works.
Many more tacos, I won't be able to fit through that thing. Whew. We are on 2 full weeks now with triple digits. Okay, so now I'm going to put my top plate on. Now what I'm going to do is, let me take this down. And now I've got this wall here, the end wall, that I want to tie into this. So my top plate is going to come over top of this side wall here, and the end wall. And what that will do is that'll tie these two walls together. Now the problem is this is 16 feet total. If I put just an 8-footer across here, what's going to happen is where these two walls join, it's going to end at that joint, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to put a 4x4 or a 4-foot piece of 2x4, and then an 8-foot piece, so I span across that separation, and then another 4-foot on the other end to tie that end wall to the side wall here. So a 4-foot, an 8-foot, and then another 4-foot. Okay, so for this top plate, I needed to bring this wall all the way out to the end because my roof rafters have to sit on top. So I just concocted this little blocking here. So I just took 2 pieces of 2x4, 6 1/4 inches, and then just put one small piece of 2x4 sitting on top of it. And that brings this all the way out like this. So it's just like this wall is coming up. So I'm going to screw this down and then screw the wall into this blocking here, and then that gives me my full width of wall across here. I'm going to do the same on the other side also. Okay, and then the last thing is to put the top plate on this 8-foot wall. Now there are a couple ways to do these walls, and another way to do this would have been to build a 7-foot wall here, just like the back wall, and then build a 1-foot wall on top of it to tie it to this end wall. And I could have done that, and I thought about it, but it would have been a little bit more work. It may have probably tied it together better, but I'm really not too concerned about it. Once I get this top plate on, then I get the sheeting and everything, it's going to be just as good. So I'm not really too concerned about it. You know, in some of these boards, unless you go to the hardware store and get the kiln dried and go through every piece, sometimes you just get this wood that's just not cooperative. But you work with what you have, and sometimes you get stuff that's a good price, but you have to beat it into submission, and I'm okay with that. Because in the long run, it'll all go together. Oh, look at that, it's perfect. Right on the end. Looks good. I know. Where are my safety glasses? But you know what?
I love you guys on YouTube, but you know what? If I was to follow every rule that you guys mandate for me, I'd be in a suit of armor with a mask, probably a respirator, a pair of full face goggles, those earmuffs for shooting, you know, when you go out target practice and whatnot. And so it's better off. I mean, when I'm sanding and when I'm cutting, I use all the protection, but when I'm just doing this, and yes, a screw can bounce back, it can hit me in the eye. And so I don't advocate being as dumb as me. I advocate that you use all the safety precautions. Don't be like me. I get it. And you guys are right, but I'm pig-headed. So the next thing I'm going to work on is all of the sheeting. All right, so all this sheeting here is 4 feet wide. Now I've got two 16-foot walls. So that means I need 4 and 4, which is 8. And these are a little over 6 feet. And so that means I need like 1.5 for each side. That would mean I need 11 sheets. Well, here's the deal. I bought 10 sheets. So I can do 4 and 4 on the long sides. 1 for this. And I'm guessing that because of this large opening, that this piece that I cut out is going to allow me to piece in this small section here on both sides. I'm going to put, now this sheeting is going to come down to within 1.5 inches from the ground. So that's going to give me, I'm going to put blocking in 1.5 inches high at the bottom so that I can take my siding and set it right on the blocking, and then I'll be able to tack it on without having to hold it into place. So that's why I did it this way. So basically 1.5 inches of the T111, or 1.5 inches of the treated 4x4 is going to be exposed. And that's fine. I need to have it up a little bit anyways, because if you go all the way to the ground, what's going to happen is if any water was to get higher than 1.5 inches or higher than the bottom of the 4x4, then water's going to start wicking up that T111. So I don't want that T111 to go all the way to the ground. I want to keep it 1.5 inches or so from the ground. In fact, a lot of people don't even go that high. They go like 3 inches from the ground, which either way works. You know, the higher you go, the less chance there is of water getting into the T111. So I'm going to go 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches. The way that I measured this is that this, from here all the way to the bottom of the 4x4, is 8 feet 1.5 inches. So basically the T111 is going to be 1.5 inches off the ground. And I think that's going to be high enough. I don't get a lot of water in here. And this is sloped, and so the water usually runs off. So 1.5 inches I think is going to be just fine. So for nails, I like to use these nice thick ones. They're 1.5 inches galvanized. And they are, believe it or not, the joist hanger nails. Now you can use any you want. A lot of people use the thinner ones on here, but I don't. I like the nice thick ones because I've seen the thinner ones pop out. Okay, so for the end walls here, I think what I'm going to do is just take and rip 11-inch pieces off of a full sheet. And so put one here, put one here, and then just piece in this. Rather than putting it up here and then nailing it in and then have to cut it out, I think that's just more of a hassle. Now let me show you what's going to happen up top. Yeah, that split here, didn't it? That's no big deal. I'm not worried about it. Now the T111 is going to come all the way up to the top right here, even with this and across. So let me grab a 2x4 and show you what it's going to look like. The roof rafters are going to go like this. Now the T111 is going to come up here even with the top of the wall. And so I'm going to cut the siding underneath this. It's not going to come up here, it's going to come underneath this because I'm going to have a trim here. Okay, so I got this all pieced together. Now, the greatest advantage to putting the one full sheet up and then cutting the hole out is that, well, it'd come to, you know, like about here and you'd have to cut it out, is because you don't have to do this piecing together. And all of your seams fall perfectly. Now, all these nails, of course, are going to get covered up by trim. You won't see those. But the two things that I don't like about it is having to get it perfect, put little, you know, screw holes through here so I can run my lines, and then have to come up with a jigsaw or, you know, or the circular saw. This was just a lot easier for me just to rip two pieces out of 11. But it's definitely a lot cleaner if you put the piece up and then cut it out. So let me take you on the inside and show you what's going to happen as far as this piece, the bracing for the top of this and for under the roof rafter. Okay, so our roof rafter is going to come like this, right? It's going to actually cantilever over. So I'm going to draw a pencil line, and I'm going to cut all of this siding off. And then we have to run a 2x4 flat underneath the roof rafter. So what we have to do first is establish our angle. And this is easy as pie. Now, to figure out the angle of your roof, you just take your square, the tip of it goes right up to the top of the 2x4, and then you put it flush against your wall like that. And that right there is your angle. Now, this doesn't have to be perfect, because when you're outside looking at the front or the back of your rafters, you're not going to be able to tell if it's even 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 inch off. It's just really close, and it's good enough for me. So this is what we're going to have to cut as far as angling the end of our 2x4s, like this. And this also comes into play in cutting our pieces for our bracing on the ends here, and I'll show you that. Now, you remember our angle that we figured out. I cut this board here, and this is my template. So I'm keeping this, and I use this for all of my cutting. I used it to cut the bevel on this. And this is beveled this way, of course, not this way. And this piece is going to go right up against the top plate, and it's going to sit right here like this. And then this is what the trim is going to get nailed to. And then this is kind of acting as a wall. And so my roof is going to cantilever over top of this. Now, it's in here that I'm going to put my bracing, like right here where I've got the seam. And I don't need it down here at the other end. So what I want to do is put my roof, one of my rafters on, just to make sure that it's completely straight and level. Say this is one of my roof rafters. And so that is actually pretty darn good. Okay, so I'm going to start on the roof now. And you're probably wondering, why did I do the sheeting on the back half and not the front before I started the roof? Well, here's the deal. This is a slanted roof, right? And so on the back side, if I would have done the roof first, the back side would have been hard for me to get the sheeting on, because when I got toward the top, I wouldn't be able to nail under the roof. Here, the roof is slanted upward. And so I can easily, when the roof is done, easily get to the top plate here to be able to nail in all of the sheeting. But on the back half, it's slanted downward, and so I can't get up inside of there. Okay, so here's how the roof is going to work. It's 16 feet total, the building is. But I want to cantilever over about 1 foot on each side. So I'm going to start in the center, and I'm going to go an 8-foot section. And then that means I'm going to have a 5-foot section on each side. Okay, so using the same angle that I used on the end truss supports, I cut these at 91.5 inches on the long side using that angle. Now on the truss supports, of course, the board is flat and it's beveled this way. But these, for the trusses, for the roof, they are going to go up like this, and using this bevel here, it will be parallel. The outside board will be parallel to the wall. So I'm going to go ahead and assemble this using the 8-footers and 7 of these 16-inch on center. Okay, now the fun part. What I'm going to do is, oh, there's one of my boards. I was missing a board, so I went and cut another one, and it was up here. I forgot I set it up here. Okay, so this center board right here should ride right along these two boards right here. Okay. You know what's funny? I'm not as strong as I used to be. I'm also not as tall. I've lost about a ½ inch or ¼ inch. Not that that would have helped. Okay. Okay, I'm going to make a mark at the 4-foot line. But first off, I got to get my tape measure. These hapless things, I hope that it proves to all you guys that you're not the only one that makes mistakes. And it should be right there at this separation. Okay, so I'm just double checking right here where this board here, this 4-foot board, exactly. Okay, so that's where this is going to sit. Now off the back end, I want it 6 inches off the back end. So I'm going to go ahead and measure 6 inches. I'm going to put 2 boards back there and then screw them down just to keep this secure. Okay, so I want the back end of this to cantilever over about 6 inches. So I've got a 8.5 inch piece of 2x4. And what this will allow me is there's 3.5 inches here and then ½ inch here. So this is 4 inches. So this here is going to be another 4.5 inches here plus the 1.5 inches. So this will give me 4.5 plus 1.5 inches is 6 inches. So if I just screw this down and then bring this the truss up to this on both sides, this side and the other side, then this will give me my 6 inch overhang. Okay, so that gives me 6 inches off the back, and it looks like 8.25 and 8.25, perfect. So I've got 6 inches off the back, 8.25 inches off the front. And this is going to be perfect because this will give me a little overhang when I go to put my greenhouse on. Okay, so there is the ladder for the left side here. Now I put a normal rung in at 16-inch center here, and then I put, they think they're 41.75 inches here at 16-inch center. Now the reason I put this one because I wanted to get one extra support going this way before I started going that way. Now, if you wanted to, you could put center pieces in here, but I'm not going to because I don't think I need it. It's not that heavy. Now this one here should square itself up once I screw it to this and then screw it down to the walls. Okay, so remember we started this earlier. We have this piece right here, and then we're going to have bracing in here. Okay, so right here, I've still got this bevel here. I want to make sure that this is also completely level. So wow, that's almost perfect. Just a little bit more. Right there, that's perfect. Okay, that's perfect. So I'm going to screw these in. I'm just going to toe nail them right here. And then same thing with this one. This one, I'm going to screw that down. You'll notice that it's just bumped up a little bit. That's just because the board is a little bit warped. So I'm going to screw that down, screw this into this wall here first, and then I'll screw this in. Then I'm going to check it completely for level, and then this side will be done. And then we're going to build the ladders for the other side. It's done the same way as this side. We'll do this again on that side, and then all the roof bracing, all the joists will be done. I thought about getting the scaffold out, but then I thought by the time I got it all put together, I'd have this darn thing done. Got to fight the wind, the fencing, old age. Okay, so I started my first board dead center, and I went out to the outside here. Now, I also am coming out over about 3/4 of an inch because I'm going to have a facing on here. Now, I'm going to have metal on the roof also, but I'm going to have a facing board right here, fascia. So that's why I came out 3/4 of an inch. Now, on the end here, you'll notice that I'm hitting this new blocking that I put in for the fascia board, for the soffit I mean, but here's the deal. I'm not hitting anything through here until I get down there to the bottom there where I put another one. Now, I'm not going to worry about it because I'm putting metal on top of this, but if you do this and you feel compelled to put blocking in each one, it's probably a good idea. I'm just not going to do it because I don't think it's necessary. It's going to be screwed down well with metal, and I don't think it's going to lift up. I'm not using felt, so I think the metal is going to hold it down really well. So I'm not worried about blocking, but if you want to put it in, it's probably a good idea. I'm just not going to do it. Okay, so the metal that I'm using is 8 foot long. It's 38 inches wide, but it covers 3 feet. Basically, you lay it down here, the flat side down on the edge, and then the next one, which has the flat side, goes right over top of the ridge of the one next to it. It's really simple. And then I am screwing it down with 1-inch grommeted screws. Okay, so these are the closures right here. They've got a little glue back on them. You just pull them off. and they go right underneath the edge here. So that keeps like bugs and everything from getting inside of here. And then now this is the front top half, the front of the building. And my metal is going to go up over like this because the water's going to wick, well, not wick, it's just going to run this way like this. So the metal has to come up and go over like this. Now on the back side, it's sloped downward. And so I don't want my metal to go on top because the water coming down will go underneath. And so the flashing goes on top of the OSB, then the closure, and then this roofing metal. That way when the water comes running down, it just runs right off. And then the closures are interlocking, so it's like a jigsaw puzzle. The next one, which is right here, has got the knob on it, goes into the recess here.
Okay, so now I've got a little bit of shoring up to do. This shed here is one long tunnel. And the only thing, I mean, I got a long wall here and a long wall here, and the only thing keeping it from kind of going back and forth is this small wall right here. And I've got most of it cut out, so there's not a lot of stability right here because I have a hole on both ends. And so what's keeping this from moving is just this small wall, and this header up here. Now, I was conscious of this when I built it, that this wall went on the outside of the long ones. Now, typically you would put a small wall on the inside, and that would keep it kind of from moving back and forth. But because this is on the outside, it has a lot more give. And so, what I need to do is I need to shore up the inside right here to keep it more stable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, this is the header, and these are on edge. And so I've got a 1/2 inch here that is, it's sitting back in. So I'm going to take a 1/2 inch of scrap OSB or the T111, whatever I have, and I'm going to put it right across here, a 3.5 inch piece. That way it'll fur it out. And then I'm going to put a 2x4 here and a 2x4 across. So what I'm doing is I'm furring it out and making it even with these first studs right here. And then once it's all even, then I'm going to go ahead and put in a 1/2 inch OSB all the way around. And so what that'll do is that'll keep it secure from moving back and forth. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. So I think that's what's going to keep this thing. I mean, it's pretty good right now, but I knew going into this that I was going to have to do something about it. And so I wanted them on the outside because I wanted a full 16 foot inside of here. And so, well, not a full 16 foot, I wanted as close as I could get. If these walls were inside, I would have lost 7 inches. And in doing it this way, by furring it out, I'm only losing 3 inches because the thickness is a 1/2 inch here, and then a thickness of a 1/2 inch. I mean, 1.5 inches of 2x4, 1.5 inches there, and all the OSB too. But I'm not losing 7 inches. So I knew going into it that I was going to have to do some securing. And I'm also going to do some in the middle also with some shelving. So when I get all done, it's going to be nice and solid.